Joining me is Trevor Kavanagh, the Sun's associate editor and a veteran observer of political leaders and opposition leaders. Trevor, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel.
What did you make of Kier Starmer's 5 minutes there?
Well, I was sitting here listening to it and feeling really quite revolted by his claim that they are acting in the public interest. Is the public interest to see our schools closed and children again plunged into this ghastly situation where depression and anxiety and a complete loss of education, some of which will never be made up for some of these children? Are these children being sent home to homes which are not always safe places? Sometimes schools are much safer. Is that in the public interest? Is it in the public interest that tens of thousands of operations are going to be held up and delayed, maybe even cancelled or come too late for people who are suffering from serious and dangerous ill health? I mean, we don't know anything about this one solitary death which apparently occurred with COVID. We don't know the age of the patient. We don't know whether they had any other illnesses that go with them, which is normally the case, actually, invariably in the case of COVID deaths. We don't know even whether they were vaccinated. So I think that's shroud waving, frankly, and I think it's extremely dangerous. And I suspect that it will only add to the anger of the Tory MPs whose numbers are gathering in the revolt, which is going to happen on Tuesday, tomorrow.
Yeah. No, I sense that's right. But I mean, the point I was making, Trevor, at the top there was that in many ways he was aping what the Prime Minister was saying yesterday, but not going as far. I mean, what is Boris Johnson doing declaring this to be an emergency when, as you say, one death associated with this variant at this stage, and all the evidence, Trevor, you've seen it, from South Africa, that actually this is much milder than the Delta variant or many things that have come before. What is Boris Johnson doing?
I think he's doing what the RAF do when their military aircraft are threatened with incoming missiles. They throw chaff out to divert the missile. And frankly, this resembles chaff. We are going through, it may well be, you know, that this Omicron version mutant of the COVID bug is actually beneficial to us all because it is a mild version. It's effectively a wonderful way of vaccinating the whole population, or the large majority of it, without vaccination. It may be a blessing. And so here we are panicking at the hospitals and vaccination stations, the queues around the block, the system crashing as people desperately try to save Christmas. It's an appalling situation. And frankly, I think that Boris does deserve to face a really good bloody nose tomorrow in the House of Commons.
Yeah, and he's caused panic today, hasn't he? I mean, I went to the local shops this morning and I was walking down the street without a mask and I could see people looking very scared. No home testing kits. They'd run out by lunchtime. And just panic. I mean, isn't it irresponsible of the Prime Minister to have done this? And is there any possibility that he can now change course? Or is he headed for one of the biggest rebellions, well, certainly since Theresa May and Brexit, but is he headed for the scale of rebellion tomorrow that actually threatens his own premiership?
Well, I think that one thing he might do, and this has been intimated, that he will abandon any idea of having vaccination passports for venues where people are gathering in large numbers. I don't think that's going to be enough now. People have got the wind in their sails. They've got the sniff of some sort of victory of sorts. Frankly, I think that some aspects of this are overblown. The idea that this is Nazi Germany is absurd, and frankly, it wouldn't worry me too much if we did have ID cards in this country, simply because, to all intents and purposes, they exist already, simply because we have Visa cards which track every move that we make. But that's irrelevant. The simple fact is that people don't want to be told that they have to have a vaccination. This is an absurd and self-inflicted wound for Boris, not the first, one of many.
Yeah, and do you sense, Trevor, because, I mean, the British public, and you've been sceptical about much of this for the last 20 months, and I read your column every Monday, of course I do, but the public actually have been remarkably compliant, haven't they? All the way through successive lockdowns and not able to meet their elderly relatives. Are we at a point now where public opinion is saying, look, as we head towards the second anniversary of this, enough's enough, we need to get on with our lives?
Well, I certainly hope so, Nigel, because I think that the big problem is that for a lot of people, they're very nervous and anxious, and they're made more anxious and nervous by all this, these dreadful, miserable press conferences where Chris Whitty stands there like some sort of walking corpse telling us we're all going to die. And you've got Sage forecasting the actually, frankly, ludicrous claims that we're going to have 75,000 people dead as a result of this Omicron version, when one person has died only in this country, and as far as I know, none in South Africa. I mean, it's ludicrous, and yet we are being terrified into scuttling around with face masks. People are genuinely frightened.
Yeah.
The other side of the coin is that if you work for instance, for the government or a government-related job, you don't have to worry about going to work. You work from home, which a lot of people thoroughly enjoy. And if you're not actually in the business world where your living is at stake, you can manage perfectly well with all of the measures that are being imposed on us.
Yeah, well, Trevor, I'm with you. I hope we get some common sense, and I hope that the government changes course, and I hope tomorrow's rebellion really shocks them. Thank you